And welcome back to the weekly market recap, where we go over this week's market while keeping it as simple as possible. First, we're going to go over a telling earnings report that we received this week, and then we're going to give a quick update with this new tariff wars. And finally, we're going to go over some very key important economic data that seems like nobody been talking about. And finally, we'll be talking about the overall market and where we are. So this past week has been the last major week of earnings season, and a lot of companies reported. If you look at the chart above, you'll see some of the biggest names of companies that you use to this day. Now, one I really want to single out happened on Monday, and that is McDonald's. And McDonald's is very important because it let us know exactly what the consumer is showing. So McDonald's earnings came out, and their earnings per share actually met expectation, but their revenue came lower than expectation. And usually for McDonald's, that doesn't happen that often. Now, what McDonald's says is they had to deal with an E. coli breakout that actually dropped revenue. But I'm a little bit skeptical on that because the E. coli breakdown was actually with the Quarter Pounder. Now, personally, I don't eat McDonald's as much as I used to, but usually when you hear people talk about McDonald's, they'll get a double cheeseburger, a Big Mac, a McChicken with cheese. Now, the Quarter Pounder does not come up. So it's very interesting that they're saying because that E. coli breakdown with Quarter Pounders that they missed on revenue. With that miss on revenue, it's actually showing that the consumer is spending less. And when they're spending less on a value item like McDonald's, that kind of tells the bigger picture for the whole overall economy. But on the guidance call, McDonald's did say that 2025 should be a good year for them. But what company wouldn't say that 2025 is going to be a good year for them? But with that, McDonald's actually rallied. If you look at the chart above, you'll see from Friday to Monday, McDonald's had a huge push up. Now it's sitting at about all-time high. So it'll be very interesting to see what McDonald's do over the next couple of days. Now, going into tariffs, the trade war has been going down. And if you look at last weekly market breakdown, you'll know what's been going on. It seems like we're having a tariff war with the United States, Canada, Mexico, and China. So Canada and Mexico actually came up to agreement. Now China is starting to push back, and they're starting to impose tariffs on the United States. Now what Donald said this week is they're going to have more further tariffs that they're going to announce pretty soon. But one in particular that he said for sure was automotives. So automotive tariffs will be very interesting. But for now, it's looking like those tariffs will drop at the beginning of April. So again, with China on 10% tariff from everything from there to now even a higher tariff on some metals, it's going to be very interesting to see how this tariff war continues. And now let's get into economic data. And this is very important because it seems like nobody is really concerned about what's going on. So this week we got major inflation data on the market, and we got the CPI and the PPI. So first, again, CPI is the consumer's inflation gauge, and it came in hot. So the expectation was about 2.8, 2.9, and it came in at 3% year over year. So again, it's showing that the price for goods for me and you is steadily going up. And then the PPI data, again, the PPI is the inflation gauge on companies, that came in hot as well. So the expectation was about 0.23%. It actually came in at 0.4%, boosting the PPI year over year to 3.5%. Now the PPI data is so important because again, Fed cannot lower interest rates if inflation is going up. And next we're going to get the PCE data, and again, that is the Fed's favorite inflation gauge. So we'll see what's the story on inflation is looking like. But the last economic data that I was saying nobody's really talking about is retail sales. Now the retail sale is so important because it shows the consumers buying power, and that's so important in a country like the United States because that's what this country runs on, consuming products. Now it came in at a lot lower than expectation. If you look at this chart above, you'll see that the retail sale was down tremendously from about 0.04 to about 0.09. Now that makes a lot of sense when you look at earnings like McDonald's. That shows that the retail customer is now having less money to spend on goods. And next week we're going to have a very important earnings to come out, and that's Walmart. And Walmart is really going to show on that retail sales because again, the consumer has to spend money on certain retails like Walmart just to buy food and the normal necessities. Now my eyes is going to be on Walmart next week to know exactly what the consumer's buying power really is. Now let's look at the overall market. The S&P 500 shows exactly what the overall market is at with the top 500 companies in the United States. So if you look at this chart above, over the last week, we had a really bullish week in the S&P 500. It looks like now we're hitting back at that $6,100 level. And that $6,100 level is so important because if we look out and we go over the last 6 months, we'll see that we keep hitting this area. From back in mid mid-December for that big crash, we topped out at about 6,100. Then after that, we went down. Then we came back up to about 6,100 and we went down again. Now, this time we're trying to break that 6,100 for the third time. And honestly, this is a huge moment in the market. And I specifically want to let you guys know this. If inflation is still going up, the consumer's buying power is still struggling. And if we can't get above the all-time highs, about 6150-ish area on the S&P 500 next week, and we do reverse, this could be a short-term top. So I really want you guys to be paying attention to the stock market next week because we could have a reversal. And just to back that up even further, if you look at this chart above, you'll see the S&P 500 over many years from about 1928. And usually for the second half of February, we usually have a hard time in the stock market and it usually drops. So if you look at your portfolio next week and you see stocks at all-time high, it might be a time to pull a little bit of chips off the table. But again, we shall see. Now going over to the cryptocurrency side still been very quiet. If you look at the chart above, you'll see that Bitcoin this week is at 9,700 and a lot has not been happening. Since I let you guys know that since Donald Trump got into office, I said on inauguration, we might hit another all-time high for Bitcoin. We hit that 108,000 and then we continuously been going down and just sideways. So again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. And then looking at the chart on Ethereum is at 2,700 and it's actually been even slower than Bitcoin. Over the last couple of weeks, we even heard from the vice president saying this might be a good time to buy Ethereum. But if you look at this chart, Ethereum is still going down and just to the right. Usually that's a bear flag when an asset goes down and then to the right, meaning that's a very high chance that it continuously go down. So we'll see what happens, but stay on high alert on the cryptocurrency market, especially if we get a sell-off in the stock market. Now, next week's earnings is very light, but we do have Walmart earnings coming out. And again, that should tell us what the spending power for the consumer is showing. Now, next week, we will receive PCE data. And again, PCE data is the Fed's favorite gauge on inflation. That will let us know more about if we're going to get these rate cuts in March or not. And finally, we will get more news on tariffs. So we'll see what Donald Trump says on that. But again, this is the weekly market breakdown. And hopefully you guys learned something and prepare for next week. Again, I'll see you soon. Peace.